It's Zach Edey with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I am your host, Greg Braggs Jr., and alongside me, as always, is our guys, Craig Bowers and Joe Jackson, as you hear the volume from my phone, because this is the preseason for everyone and not just our Purdue Boilermakers who fall to Creighton here in a little exhibition showdown, a nice little test to get this team calloused up for the regular season. And so, you're not going to focus too hard on the final score, but at the end of the day, the Purdue Boilermakers fall 92 to 87. Was that the correct final score? 93 to 87. But there's a lot of things to take from this game. We're going to get into it. Some of the different rotations we saw, some of the defensive, philosophies we're starting to see. No more life without Zach Edey is going to be a lot different on both ends of the court. A lot of young players getting playing time in here. I'll throw it to you guys, and then I'll give you guys my instant reaction here in a little bit. But I want to get it from you two here first. So Craig, I'll start with you. Your instant reaction from the game.
My instant reaction from the game, first of all, would be let's remember it's an exhibition game, and Painter's not scheming against specific players or anything like that. He didn't do it last year against Arkansas. He didn't do it this year. It's just kind of like, let's throw them out there. Let's run our stuff. Let's see what happens. So I'm still not taking away too much from the final score. But by and large, and Joe can disagree with me here if he does, I think by and large, a lot of what we saw tonight is what we thought was going to be the case. If you listen to us most of the offseason in terms of what different players could bring, what the issues might be from this Purdue team, and what things they might excel at. Other than two sophomores that I thought just were a little bit concerning in terms of lack of production tonight.
Yeah, 100%. And, one of the things that I think we saw was the thing that stood out to me, and I apologize here, guys. Like I said, it's preseason for everyone. But the guy, obviously to me, the thing that really stood out is first time laying my eyes on CJ Cox and Jakari Harris. Jakari Harris obviously was kind of overplaying a little bit, in the second half. He got caught by a veteran guard, being a little too aggressive, but I'll take that all day long. I want a guy that has an aggressive mindset like that. And CJ Cox just completely blew me away. This guy has length for a guard, and he's going to give a lot of players nightmares here over the next few years, for the Gold and Black, and really loved what I saw from the defensive end. Obviously, he'll, be learning as he goes what he can do on the offensive end. But how Matt Painter, it always starts on the defensive end. And those two guys, it's a really great showing for the first time out there. And I can see why Matt Painter brought him into this program. Joe, your instant reaction for the game.
Instant reaction is first one is it's good to be back. It's good to do another post-game show with you guys. It's good to see the chat rolling in. If you guys are here, anybody that's tuned in, we do appreciate you. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps us a ton because we'll have these, every single game throughout the season. Beyond that, it was great to see Braden Smith be aggressive, right? And Zach Edey did play tonight in the NBA, but Braden Smith, without him on the floor, 31 points, 12 of 23 shooting. Creighton's defense is designed for Braden Smith to be able to attack. It is good to see Braden be able to do that. Beyond that, the defenses, we're going to dive into the defense. Maybe it was a little worse than what I even expected. A lot of that has to do with the center spot, and we'll talk about that. But also, I agree with you, Braggs and Craig. CJ Cox and Jakari are just they're the dudes. they're going to eat into a lot of people's minutes, and they're probably going to play more minutes than even I expected. And I, at one point, sort of thought Jakari would start a while ago, and I think I said Jakari would get 20 minutes and CJ gets like 8 to 10, and I might be underselling both of those.
Yeah, 100%. And it's you're seeing that with those two guys. I would say the other thing too, when you look at Daniel Jacobson, obviously a lot of potential, and first game you're facing some pretty tough bigs in Creighton that know what they're doing. He's going to have to learn to stay on his feet. Obviously, everybody's going to keep saying that he needs to put on muscle. Obviously that's the goal for everybody, right? They get into college, you got that baby weight, you're eventually going to put some more weight on, but how much more? I don't know. He's just going to have to learn to play strong with the stature that he has, right?
Yeah.
And so staying on his feet, I think, is the start of that. A few times he got caught, and at the end of the game, there's a couple times you saw there. But at the end of the day, I think he's got a lot of different things to his game, some range to his shot, and obviously a shot blocking ability with his length. So, like I said, nothing that you're not burying any of these guys for any mistake in a game like this. And I think, like, when you look at last year's exhibition game and how Purdue had bigger fish to fry at that point, right? You mentioned, Joe, the last time we were on when Matt Painter came on. If you haven't had a chance to watch that episode here last week, where we were lucky enough to talk to Matt Painter once again to start the year, that was really insightful conversation. But afterwards, Joe, you mentioned, Purdue really wasn't taking the exhibition game all that seriously last year, and they lost it. And Purdue fans, expectedly freaked out a little bit over it, overreacted. But this game felt a little different. This game to me felt like Purdue took it seriously all the way down to the wire. And Braden Smith, what did he end up with? 31 points. Yeah. It would have been a career high if the game had counted. I don't think the rotational minutes were that much different. Maybe during that 10-minute mark down to the 6-minute mark where Braden wasn't out there, maybe that was a little bit of Painter giving him some time off, but then he brought him back in, and Braden knocks down a 3 to try to give it one last ditch effort. So I think Painter liked that they were being tested. They were down 10 at the end, because then you start to kind of find out who you can count on in moments like that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too for me to take away from this, and my general sentiment is, like, one, Painter was tinkering with lineups. If this was a real game and he was really trying to win, there was a stretch from minute 6 to like minute 3, I believe. I know Jacobson played the whole from like 6 on in the last 6 minutes of the second half. Creighton was very, very small, like very small. And I think Painter kept Jacobson in just to get him reps, and TKR was not in. Like, if this was, a Sweet 16 game, which who knows, maybe it could be, like, TKR is in that game at that point, and he is potentially even the small ball 5, just matching up with what Creighton could do. Also, and a couple comments have said it, like, Kalkbrenner is one of the best centers in the game, period. He's one of the best defensive centers in the game. He might be the best. He might win National Defensive Player of the Year this year. When you combine that with Will Berg and Jacobson, if you combine for 50 career college minutes, I don't know how many Berg actually played last year. Less than that. First has kind of been in and out. Burgess obviously is a freshman. Like, you have a lot of these new guys. What we see today, in theory, should be maybe not like from an individual standpoint. Sure, people probably have worse games than they had today, but like from a totality standpoint, this is in theory roughly like the worst game we should see out of the big man group, assuming things progress like Painter and Purdue like to do.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I was just going to say no doubt. And I mean, I think it's really important to understand that the biggest question was the 5 spot, right? And like Joe, when we did the show last week, we were pretty sold that Jakari was going to start at that point from everything that we'd heard, and just what Painter never said Jakari starting, but he described the player he wanted on the floor next to Fletcher and Braden. And like, that really could have only been Jakari or CJ, right? Based on what he was describing. So I think the question mark has been primarily the 5 spot. And I think we saw just a feeling out of that 5 spot in general. And those guys, when you and I were texting offline, just like those guys need reps, man. Like they just need reps. And Wilberg is going to be better if he gets more reps. Daniel Jacobson is going to be better if he gets reps. I know we saw a really small sample size of Burgess, and I'm going to make a case for him later, but he'll be better with more reps. That 5 spot's going to get better, without a doubt. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and I think we need to be a little bit patient with it.
Well, I mean, and I think the other thing that, when you talk about takeaways from this game, like to me, as great as it was to watch Braden Smith drop 31 points and just look like he's ready to take the next step in his career as somebody that's just dominant. Like you go under the screen, he's going to knock down the 3. You go over it, he's going to take you inside, and he's going to maneuver his way either to an easy layup or a drop off to a big man or PKR with a little duck shot, right underneath and inside in the paint. So, he's skilled in that way. But at the same time, we all understand the grind of what the Big Ten play can be. And I don't know if expecting Braden Smith to drop 25 to 30 points a game is sustainable. I obviously hope it is, but I worry about fatigue factor. Is he always going to have that shot? Because there's times where Braden Smith's shot doesn't always go down. Tonight it was. So if that's what we see all year long, bring it on. But at the same time, as much as I want to see guys like Jakari Harris and CJ Cox and in there in the rotation, Braden Smith needs shooters around him. How long did it take into the game before Braden got his first assist? And I just feel like they got to figure out that balance of, because, obviously there's going to be some concerns on the defensive end, but if you're going to try to, get as many shots up as you can, you need guys that can actually knock down some shots outside of Fletcher Lawyer.
And
no doubt. And
you go, Kraig. I took the last
one. Sorry. One of the things that I wrote down is what if somebody traps or high hedges on Braden and forces the ball out of his hands? Then what are we, right? If because Creighton is not known, never has been known. Like there's styles out there, and Creighton is a much better Iowa in my eyes. They're a very good offensive team. Joe doesn't agree with me. They're a very good offensive team, but they're not, to me, they've never been known like for really good perimeter defense. That's not typically the type of players that they have. So if we're going up against a team that really pressures the ball, forces the ball out of Braden's hands, then who are we? But I think you can make the counter to that tonight of like Braden and Fletch could pretty much get what they wanted tonight for the most part, so they didn't have to spray it around. So Miles only takes 3 shots. Cam takes no shots.
Right.
Jakari gets 2 on the same play. CJ only takes 3. But like Braden and Fletch could pretty much get what they wanted all night, so they didn't have to distribute to other people. So I think it's a little bit of a catch-22 of we didn't get to see it because those guys could dominate, right? Or was it a matter of, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know that we don't know those other guys can't contribute because they were able to do their thing.
Yeah. My face was, I agree, I guess, a little bit more with your later point of that, of
perimeter defense.
Creighton's been a top 30 defense in Ken Palm the past 5 years. A lot of it is anchored with Kalkbrenner.
Right.
They don't force a ton of turnovers always, and so that's not always. They just don't. So I get what you're saying. Yeah, and it was going to be similar to my point. Like, this was a game where Braden Smith, like, if this was a real game, I want Braden Smith taking 23 shots. There's going to be games where he's going to be taking 10 to 12 and needs to facilitate. You bring up the trap. They did it once in the second half with 3 minutes and 50 seconds left. Creighton hedges, Smith short rolls to TKR, defense rotates. It's a lob up to Jacobson. Like, I am fine. Like, I have confidence that whatever coverage you throw at Braden Smith, he's so good. He's just going to figure it out. If you trap, then that means it's going to be put on the pressure, probably for TKR, to either be able to score out of a short roll or facilitate. He facilitated this, like the single sample size that we saw. You play drop coverage like Creighton does, which is, they're insanely good at it. That's a game where Braden Smith has to get his shots. Like I would have been far more concerned if Braden Smith took like 10 shots today, rather than him taking 23. That would
and
have
I
been
agree.
alarming for me.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. My question is though, is Braden makes the right read. He dishes it. Is that guy going to hit the shot? And like, we don't know because we really didn't get to see it much tonight. I mean, I think if it goes to TKR, sure. But if he's got to spray it to other people, we just didn't get to see that tonight. And on the flip side, I don't know that we can judge that much because he didn't have to tonight. He was just killing.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a quick break here, and then we'll transition into some other things here. As we move along in our first post-game show of the season here on Boilers in the Stands. Over 1,000 people tuned in live here on a Saturday night. We're up against college football, the World Series, and here you guys are, all the faithful Purdue Boilermaker basketball fans watching here post-game show. Late Saturday night. We appreciate it. Hit that like button while you're here. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, we really appreciate you always. Doesn't matter where you're finding us, but if you come over to our YouTube channel and subscribe to Brags in the Stands, or you follow this show, hitting the like button and sharing it that way is a big help to what we're trying to do here. But like I said, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll transition into some more Purdue basketball talk.
Yeah, so we want to thank BJ Rule for sponsoring this show. He sponsored our previous show as well and was a sponsor last year. Really appreciate him sponsoring. Purdue graduate and current Lafayette resident, BJ Rule has close to 15 years experience helping buyers, sellers, and real estate investors in Lafayette and surrounding areas. If you are looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, give BJ a call or text to set up an appointment to see how he can help you accomplish your goals. Your home will likely be the most expensive purchase of your life. Have the experts with Rainey & Company at Keller Williams on your side and let BJ help you navigate this process. Call 317-345-4600. Again, that's 317-345-4600. And we really appreciate BJ and his sponsorship of this show with everything that he does. Great friend of mine. If you have realty needs in this area, give him a call.
Absolutely. So we appreciate you, BJ.
Greg's, yeah. It's been a long day, Greg. I woke up randomly at 3:30 this morning, couldn't fall back asleep, went and ran a 5K, went to a volleyball match, then watched the game, and now I'm on the post-game show. So if I'm stumbling over some words, I told Joe earlier, I was like, you might have to carry me a little bit.
But you're running 5Ks now. You're running 5Ks now, so your stamina is as good as it's ever been. We're proud of you. You've been working hard at this. How'd the 5K go?
Finished sixth out of 45 in my age group.
Wow.
Set a PR.
And you know what? I'm not even gonna make an old person joke there. I'm gonna give you your flowers that you deserve, because I could have done like an age group joke, but instead I didn't, because I'm proud of you. You're working hard, and I would never do a 5K. Running is punishment. Running in basketball is punishment. You got to run sprints when you do something wrong, but you're doing it, voluntarily. So credit to you. But Joe, you're 100% right. It was very refreshing just to get back and I was sitting here like, I'm not even ready for basketball season, especially college basketball. I know NBA's kind of already gotten going here a little bit. But I was like a couple days ago, I'm like, man, I'm not ready for basketball season, but it was nice to sit back and watch Purdue basketball once again. First time putting your eyes on this team since they were in the national championship game, and, seeing this new look team and seeing how things are gonna, and it was, halfway through the first half, you thought maybe the game was going to start to get away from them. And then they slowly just started to chip away. They eventually took their first lead in the second half, right to start the second half, for the first time, like in the first, minutes of the game. And it reminded you so much of the teams we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years. And for me, it was like, man, it's nice to know that we're always in good hands with Matt Painter and this coaching staff. Yes, there's a lot of new pieces. There's a lot of young players on this team, but they're going to find their way. They're not going to play Creighton every game here to start the year. You're going to have some teams where you're going to be able to, build your confidence up a little bit, and then you'll get into some of your tougher non-conference opponents. And so, it was nice to kind of kick the dust off for a lot of us seeing this team for the first time. I know, Kraig, you've been to more than a few practices here this offseason, so some of this may not have been as much of a surprise to you, but for us, being able to see these guys for the first time was a lot of fun. And like I said, life without Zach Edey. Zach knocked down a 3 here tonight for the Memphis Grizzlies. Had another game where he got into double figures. So we'll be, rooting for him as he continues on to his NBA career. But now Purdue's got to move on to figuring out how they operate. And so, I don't know where you guys want to take this next. Kraig, I know you had a couple different ideas. So I'll kind of let you guys, take the lead, take the ball from here and let me know where you want to take this.
Yeah, I was just maybe saying let's do some big takeaways from a team perspective before we roll into some player things. So I know, Joe, we've kind of mentioned a couple of things, but I know offline we talked about just defensively. You maybe want to run with that from just like a big takeaway of maybe an area of concern.
This was like, for all the people that this whole offseason were hating on Braden and all that for like, how are they going to score without Edey? Like everybody just, not everybody, but a lot of people I feel like overlooked how much Edey impacted the defense and how much he just covered up any sort of mistake. And you started to see those, like there's some plays where it's just like, yeah, Edey like saved that last year. And this year it's not. Now, obviously we shouldn't expect Berg or Jacobson or First or Burgess to be Zach Edey day, like ever, period. But like even close to that day one. But it was a big thing, right? Like, I don't think any of the centers really stood out, particularly on the defensive end. I think all of them showed flashes of a little bit different things, and you could talk about some upside there. I think the guards, like screen navigation defensively, is just going to have to get better. It's not something Purdue is generally great at outside of Jakari and probably CJ Cox. Those are the only two I really only trust right now to navigate screens with any sort of like efficiency, I guess I should say. And then when that doesn't happen, now you're putting pressure on the defense to rotate. It also looked like a defense that was playing their first game at times where rotations weren't made, switches weren't communicated correctly. Like a lot of the little things that also will just improve naturally with time. But yeah, it's an exhibition and it's Painter and they probably didn't game plan and all of that. So I do expect it to get better, but it was still some sirens were going off in my head of what was going on defensively. Creighton's also a really good offense too. Like that can't be overlooked.
Right. And you mentioned on the preview show, like just how good Creighton is at running actions and many different types of actions and how well they got us on some like baseline cuts and backdoor cuts, and pretty much everybody got caught at some point in there. But man, the rim protection was just worrisome to me. And it didn't really matter who, because if Jacobson was in there and somebody went up soft, he could come over and alter the shot or block the shot. But if somebody like backed him down, they were just bully balling through him. Berg could if somebody tried to just straight back down, Berg could put some physical pressure to keep that from happening. But if anybody quick came by him, it was a foul, right? For the most part. I think he got the one block, but he just got into foul trouble because he couldn't stay with them. And then when we went small ball, First and TKR, they did some good things out on the perimeter, but they scored like at the rim like 3 times in a row immediately when that pair was in there. So there's just big red flags of what are we going to do in terms of paint defense and rim protection in general for me. That to me is a big takeaway.
Creighton was 16 of 22 at the rim. Like it's 22. What I'm going to do some quick math. 22 divided by 60 is roughly like 38% probably ish. So about 38, we'll say 38% of their.
You said they were 22 of 60?
16 of 22 at the rim. They were 36 of 60 overall. So like 38% of their shots came at the rim, and
they were 73% on those shots at the rim.
Yes.
And Creighton's bigs were pulling Purdue's bigs out of the paint, right? Because they have that opportunity to take, you saw Kaufman-Renn hit a few shots deep. Then you had the other big guy where they played a little high-low on them, and Jacobson got caught, TKR got caught. So, it's going to be a work. I think they do such a great job defensively of, rotating. And that, they're always going to, if a guy gets, if they start kicking the ball around, they're going to be able to rotate back and cover up. So to me, that that was encouraging. But yeah, I mean, nobody's going to have the dominance that Zach Edey. But on the other side of the ball, that was the one thing I thought it kind of, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but for as much as Zach Edey got doubled and triple teamed underneath, I thought that because now you don't see that as much, now that's going to open up some easier lanes for Braden Smith to operate. Does that make sense? Like if Zach Edey isn't down there, does that give Braden Smith a little more room to operate now when he's driving to the rim?
It depends on the lineup, and that is one of the points I wanted to bring up. So you segued straight into it, Braggs, is like specifically with Jacobson at the 5, he knocked down the 3 early. And I think I was an advocate of like, hey, he might not come in and be a good shooter right away. He was 2 of 9 last year in high school. I know there's this upside and talk about him being a stretch 5. He knocked one down. It made Kalkbrenner respect him. And so why I bring that up is there was a play where, or I'll go to the board.
Well, the board. Award-winning segment you guys are going to get here. Once again, the board is back.
So, all right, let me first preseason. I got to line up too. Basically, so Braden Smith, TKR right here. Jacobson was here, right in this corner right here, and I forget Lawyer there, Jakari there, right. This is a high pick and roll right here. The reason I bring it up, right, because you're talking about does Smith have easier lanes. This was in the second half. Jacobson had already hit a 3. He was getting a little bit of respect from Kalkbrenner, who's Kalkbrenner's arguably the best rim protector in the entire country. Kalkbrenner was playing him like in this spot. If this is Berg, I mean, even First probably could do it. Burgess probably will get this treatment until proven. I would expect a lot of bigs to sit there, but on this play specifically, Kalkbrenner, 7'2", he's out here. And so now as Braden comes, that's enough respect as a shooter that, yes, Braden's able to get here, right? TKR is going to kind of short roll into this area. I forget specifically if Braden made the layup or what specifically happened, but it was something I noticed, right? Because the other thing is, say it's, here TKR setting the screen, and it's like, let's go with Berg for now, right? And I know Berg has also potential upside as a shooter. If Berg's here, that does place Kalkbrenner right here. And so then, yeah, that drive here is different. It's going to be something I'm monitoring. I don't expect every team to give Jacobson, or if Berg can start stretching the floor. I think there's going to be more teams that make him prove it before they really commit to it. But it was something I noted, something I'm going to be kind of monitoring going forward, because it's like that is a big thing for how Braden can create for himself and for others. Muted. We need a new jar.
Damn it. Jeez Louise. Trying to let you have it. Didn't want to breathe into the mic while you're on the board, and then I forget to unmute. Some people were asking about the box score. Brian Newbert did share it. We lifted that from Brian. We appreciate Brian as always, killing it with his coverage as he always does. And so little box score statistics. If you can see this, if you're watching here on the YouTube channel, we appreciate you guys if you do. Running through some different things. Purdue shot 48% from the field on 32 of 57 shooting, 38% from 3 on 8 of 21 from the 3-point land, 63% from the free throw line. Braden missed a couple big ones down the stretch. Daniel Jacobson at the very end, 15 of 24 from the free throw line. Only 7 turnovers, 9 points off of turnovers, 33 rebounds to 31 for Creighton. So they win the rebounding battle. So some different things to take from that. 32 points in the paint. Creighton had 46 points in the paint. So something we're not used to here is being outscored in the paint, but we were outscored by a wide margin here tonight. And then assists, only 17 assists for Purdue, 25 for Creighton. Creighton led for most of this game for almost 37 minutes of the basketball game. So, that's interesting. And I know, Kraig, you had an interesting stat you were talking about before we came on. I don't know if you wanted to share that here with the audience.
Well, Painter always talks about just if he preaches winning the turnover battle and specifically keeping it at 10 or less, and winning the rebounding battle. and I don't remember exactly what the stat is that he quotes, but like in the last 10 years, they've maybe lost 2 games, maybe none. I don't remember the exact stat. It's very, very small in terms of the amount of games they lost. If they win the rebounding battle and they keep turnovers at 10 or less. And they did that tonight and they still lost. And I think the stat that you brought up specifically that covers that is the points in the paint and the differential in that. And obviously we talked about that being a concern a second ago, but I mean, 46 points in the paint, dude, there's some Big Ten games that end up 62-60. Like that's a lot of points in the paint to give up.
Yep. So, that's Joe. Look at that. Now you have to pay into the mute jar. How the turntables.
Yeah. It's preseason. It's preseason. I'm going to blame it on that. I don't have too much to add for terms of points in the paint. I think we nailed it. Like there's going to be questions. Maybe when we dive into individual players in here in a second, we'll touch on that a bit more. It's gonna be interesting to watch unfold throughout the years. I'll say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Blake does bring up a good point. He just said something about their 3-point percentage being crazy. I think some of that was open looks that they gave up, and some of it was just like what Pop Isaac shoots 4 out of 6 tonight, and he was 29% on the year last year.
Yep.
And I know like Purdue has this stigma of like everybody that like every game we play, there's some 20% shooter that shoots like 70% against us. But yeah, there was some, I mean, Ashworth is a great 3-point shooter. But there were some outliers there of just like, oh, wow, that guy's really nailing them tonight, for sure. But I thought we'll get into individual player stuff. I thought Jakari was great on ball, like man on man. I thought he was chasing a lot of screens behind tonight and was a little slow to pick up on those some. But we'll get into that on the personal play. I thought he gave up a few open threes just being slow, kind of jumping to chase that screen or jumping to chase like Chicago action, zoom action, whatever. Either one of those and being behind guys coming off of screens.
Yeah, so, looking ahead here, you've got Grand Valley State coming up on Wednesday. That'll be an exhibition. And then Monday, things kick off officially. You got Texas A&M, CC, on Monday, day before election day. Then Friday, Northern Kentucky on the 8th, November the 8th, Yale. So you got a few ones before you go into Alabama and Marquette back-to-back that are going to start up the ante. So you'll be able to find yourself here with some games here before you start getting into some tougher competition as it starts to pick up in non-conference play. So this was a good first test. I don't know exactly where you want to take this. I know you had the minutes up. Did you want to touch into that, Joe, at all? Or did you want to get into individual player?
That'll be a good segue into individual players, I think. And so, that's the wrong one. Ignore the total minutes. Again, preseason, obviously Braden Smith played more than 17 minutes. But for anybody that is watching on YouTube, what is up on the screen is any box that is filled, that means that player was on the floor for that minute. Obviously, it is by how many minutes are left in the half up at the top. Bottom row is Purdue, like what that lineup wins, plus minus. I'm going to just throw in the caveat. Do not value plus minus for individual lineups, probably for most games in general, but especially this when there's just so much tinkering. Braden plays a lot of minutes. Fletch plays a lot of minutes. CKR plays a lot of minutes. And then I think the overall view is just like Heidi through first and is just kind of all over the place, like some scattered minutes there. This was definitely a game where Painter was trying different things, trying different rotations, just wanting to see what sticks while he can without it being really a meaningful win or loss. I'll throw it to you, Kraig, first, though, who you kind of want to go with immediately.
On individual breakdowns?
Yes.
Let me start with Braden Smith, Braggs, and get that thing off of there. He is him. Like that's it. Full stop. Braden Smith is him. And I think there's going to be some people there were off-season takes of like his assist numbers are going to be incredibly low without Zach in the lineup. But if a team is going to defend Braden like Creighton defended Braden tonight, that's the stat line you want to see. You want to see that he's aggressive and attacking and taking open threes, taking open mid ranges, getting all the way to the rim like he did a couple times in the second half. That's what you want. So I mean, he still had 5 assists tonight, even though he primarily was a scorer. 31 points on above 50% shooting total. I think, what is that, like 45% from 3 in the end or something like that? I mean, 7 rebounds. He's him. Like, Braden is, anybody who is concerned about Braden being not an incredible player without Zach Edey, I don't want to say you put that to rest because that was an exhibition game, but it's starting to put it to rest.
Braden Smith is just so good. And like, it doesn't matter that Zach Edey's not there. I wrote the article about it. Like, hey, Purdue's offense is Purdue's offense. Even last year when when Zach Edey wasn't on the floor, we already mentioned, right? This is the game where Braden Smith needs to take 23 shots. There are going to be games, Northwestern is one that comes to my head. They're going to trap. That's generally what they do against ball screen coverage. That might be a game where he needs to flirt with double-digit assists, most likely. There's still going to be games that he struggles. Like, it's not that, but like, yeah, that's probably my biggest takeaway, and my best takeaway is just Braden Smith's good. Like, he's going to be good. He's really, really good at basketball. And it was fun to watch him do that. Quick note on the rebounding, something that just kind of popped into my head, specifically with this game, and it probably applied to Lance Jones last year. But when I saw with Jakari and CJ, mainly Jakari just because they shared the floor more, with Jakari being able to really pressure the ball and take that lead ball handler, that allows Braden oftentimes to be in spots where he's either guarding like the corner or somewhere low on the wing. And I was like, oh, that puts him in like a really, really good spot to go rebounds. Now, Creighton didn't crash the glass. They were solid offensive rebounding, but there was also times they didn't crash. It was just a little note that I noticed. I was like, oh, Harris and Cox's defensive pressure really does put Braden in the spot that he can go grab and go.
Yep. And to finish off the, stats with Braden Smith, he finishes with 31 points on 12 of 23 shooting, 5 of 11 from 3, 2 of 4 from the free throw line, 7 rebounds, only 4 assists on 34 minutes of play, only 4 turnovers, with all that carrying the ball, 1 foul on the day, and then I think the other thing that you see with him is the evolution of his fadeaway shot, right? Fadeaway mid-range. And he's really started to perfect that. And, when you talk to Painter, I think one of the main things he always talks about, especially when you come into a new season, is if you're going to try something in the game, you better have shown me that you've worked on it all off season. You don't get to try things out during the season. Once things get rolling, you only can go to what you can do. And so clearly Braden, has taken that fadeaway mid-range to the next level because he, went to that a lot here tonight on the baseline, on the elbow. And that to me is an unblockable shot, once you really start to get in your bag on that. And I can't wait till he really starts to institute that on post-ups. You've seen a lot of really savvy veteran guards in the Big Ten, use that ability. And I think he's going to eventually get to that as well. Start posting him. I'd love to see that. Start posting him up a little bit once you start creating a little bit of mismatches on guards. But really loving the way he's shooting the ball with that fadeaway mid-range. I want to see more of that here throughout the year. I mean, to me, if we're going to talk about, individual players and minutes, I think the thing that stands out to a lot of us, and, it's only one game, so we're only asking the question. We're not sounding the alarms. And as encouraging as Jakari Harris and CJ Cox were tonight to see young players come out and play that aggressive, especially on the defensive end, to not see Camden Heide, to not see Miles Colvin as much when they've been here, and at the end of the day, Matt Painter is only going to reward who earns it at practice. We saw this, with Zach Edey as he rose to dominance here at Purdue. You were hearing whispers that he was dominating Travion and different guys at practice, and then all of a sudden the season starts and he's starting, right? And so Camden Heide and Miles Colvin got to earn it at practice, but I just don't understand at this point how they're letting freshmen come in and get those kind of minutes. Again, I'm not trying to sound the alarms, but I just know how Matt Painter is. And if he's seen enough at practice to say these guys are going to get more looks than some guys that played in a national championship game, just a few months ago. I'm asking the question again, not sounding the alarm, but those are two guys that I see can help on the offensive end and defensive end because of their athleticism, and to not see them play enough tonight, I just am asking the question, why?
I think with Colvin, it's as simple as, and I don't think people will want to admit it, but like Colvin and Lawyer's impact on the game overlaps a lot, where they're both kind of not really a true ball handler, can score the ball, can shoot the ball really, really well. Maybe not the best defender. I think Colvin Wright probably has higher upside defensively. I would argue right now Fletch has higher upside offensively just with his ability to actually get downhill. Right now Fletch is just getting those minutes, and that's eating in Colvin, when CJ Cox and Jakari provide closer to that Lance Jones type role, and that's what Painter wants next to Smith and Fletch. The Heidi one is a little more confusing to me, and I guess it's similar in vein of like Heidi's not going to play the three as much because for those same reasons, right? Is he's not somebody that can really handle the ball, so he would need to be in a lineup with like Braden and Jakari, and that's going to happen at times.
Or CJ,
yeah. And then also like they didn't go to their small ball that much, right? TKR, I don't think they played TKR at the 5
at all.
Oh, I cut it off, but like on this graphic, orange is point guard, green shooting guard, yellow small forward, gray power forward, blue center. If you want to flip flop some of them, that I have no real issue, but those are the colors for that. But yeah, looking at Heidi, like, right, he played 6 minutes at the 3 and 7 minutes at the 4, it looks like. When TKR is playing that much, he didn't play any 4 with TKR at the 5 is kind of what I was getting to. And I'm rambling, but it's preseason. So that's kind of where the answer is. Does that hold for anything more, or is that just a Painter was trying to get different guys minutes in an exhibition
and get young guys looks in a high leverage type of game against a talented team, right? Where it doesn't count.
All right, so Greg, you said the fact that Cam, and don't go looking at anything right now. You said the fact that Cam and Colvin didn't get as much run as CJ and Jakari. So out of those 4 guys, which of those 4 played the least amount of minutes tonight?
Colvin.
Joe?
I'm looking.
I told you not to look, Joe. You cheater.
I know. Okay, I know it's a trick question, but I'm still going to guess Colvin because that's how it felt.
No, it is not. Out of those 4, Greg, that we just named, which one jumped off the page to you the most today?
CJ Cox, easily.
Okay. He played 6 minutes less than everybody else that we just mentioned.
And that just goes to show you how much he jumped off the page to me, right?
Right.
So then it's more about impactful minutes as opposed to actual minutes on the court.
Exactly. I think there's a couple of things here, and Joe and I have highlighted this multiple times. Just from what we're reading between the tea leaves, we talk sometimes about what we'd like to see, and then we talk about like what we're hearing from the coaches and what they want to see. And as Joe said multiple times, they want a secondary ball handler next to Braden. Fletcher's not the secondary ball handler against pressure, and they want a guy that can guard the other team's point guard effectively and disrupt their initiation to offense. And those skills are primarily contained between CJ and Jakari. Miles can do it defensively somewhat now. He's gotten much better there, but his ball handling skills just aren't at the same level to be able to really handle that against defensive pressure. So that's going to fall to those 2 guys if that is what Painter wants. And then at the same time, we talked about how much Braden and Fletch benefited from Zach being down low in terms of getting open threes. But Fletcher can come off of a high ball screen and shoot a little mid-range shot. He's got a handle. We've seen him get all the way to the rim and create angles. We know Braden can, right? If you look back at last year, primarily, especially Cam, was a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. Or on closeout, somebody chasing out after they doubled Zach then he could attack that closeout and drive baseline and get to the rim.
Right.
That's primarily what he did. So without Zach there, that changes maybe. And I asked Painter this the other day when we were in the interview talking about, does the attributes that you look for in players change when you don't have that gravity of Zach there? And I think Cam was somebody specifically that highly benefited from what Zach drew in terms of attention from everywhere else. And then that allowed him to show his athleticism when they were chasing on a crazy closeout and he could drive right past him, get to the rim or back cut and get to an alley-oop, that type of thing.
So essentially what you're saying.
We've seen Miles, though, get to a 3 dribble shot, like come around a screen, take 2 or 3 dribbles and pull up. The only thing that shocked me tonight about Miles and Cam was that we didn't really run any actions for Miles when he was in there, like we ran for Fletcher. And I really thought when Miles was in, they would repeat those same actions they ran for Fletcher with Miles. And I don't feel like we saw that tonight. Did we, Joe?
Yeah, I'm hoping to be able to rewatch the game, and it'll be something I'm looking for. But off the top of my head, like nothing, not the same usage, that's for sure, is what they did for Lawyer. I think they still did once or twice, but not the same usage is what I'll go with.
So essentially what you're saying is without the gravity of Zach and it making it easier to beat somebody off the dribble that's late closing on you, to then have to beat someone off the dribble that's, face guarding you and is stuck to you a little tighter than they were last year when guys are flaking off you to try to double Zach. That's where the answer might lie with guys like Camden Heide. That's essentially the point you're trying to make, right, Kraig?
Well, I'm saying like CJ specifically, if we're talking about CJ or Jakari, like CJ excels, and CJ's not even like super athletic or super quick. He reminds me of Etuan Moore. I've made this comp multiple times, but like he just knows how to use his angles and find space and create space and then immediately rise and shoot. And you saw that he hits that mid-range jumper. I think he got fouled on every other shot he took tonight because he got people out of position and then they fouled him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just crafty, man. Like so crafty with the ball.
I want to add in one thing, and it's an exhibition and all that. With Heide and Colvin specifically, and this leans even a little bit more Heide, where he is definitely somebody that has to be, you want somebody to create and kick out to him and let him catch and shoot or drive. You mentioned, Edie playing a part in that just with his gravity. Creighton with Kalkbrenner being a dominant center, so the past few years that he's been there, they are consistently, top 10 or so, top 15 in teams that limit 3-point attempts and limit assists. They turn it into, they're similar to what Purdue did with Edie, right? They turned it into a even more so, honestly, than Purdue. They turned it into a 2-on-2 game if it's pick and roll. They don't show a lot of help because they know Kalkbrenner can just clean up at the rim. They want to force you to that mid-range. We've talked about that, being Brain Smith pull-up. That also is going to limit shots for Heide, for Colvin, specifically on the perimeter, just because from a specific defensive standpoint, Creighton wants to limit that as much as possible. Again, it's going to be a note for me of like, was Heide and Colvin's usage because of the game flow and what Creighton was also doing, or is it just Painter trusts CJ to create more and just wants Braden and Fletch to have this really, really high usage? So I don't know the answer. That's going to be something I'm looking at.
Well, Jeff Parks here in the chat saying Rafael interviewed PJ this week and he said CJ is a bucket. So
yeah, he specifically said somewhere in that interview, he said, CJ, you're here to shoot the damn ball. Like, shoot the ball. Like, quit passing up shots. Because he's a little passive. He's a little bit like Braden. He kind of, not that he creates as much as Braden, but he just isn't. I don't think he has naturally that killer mentality, and they're trying to drill it in him. Like, you're a bucket. Shoot the ball every time when you have a sliver of a gap.
Yeah. So, again, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, no, I was gonna move it on.
I was just gonna say, we appreciate everybody tuning in. First post game show, knocking off the cobwebs. A lot of us getting to see this team for the first time. So once again, hit that like button here while you're hanging out here on a late Saturday night here.
I'm gonna jump in and actually bring it back because I think this isn't a bad comp. Taterology says I think CJ could be very similar to Tyson Walker down the road. I hadn't thought of that. I don't hate that comp at all, though.
That is the length, right? The body type, the wingspan. That was the thing that stood out to me most with CJ Cox. Was it felt like he has like a longer wingspan for a guard.
Yeah, no, I agree. Sorry, I should keep this moving forward. Kraig, I'm going to throw it to you because I think you've been the biggest advocate for him this offseason. And I'm surprised you haven't talked to there's two names actually that
I haven't had a chance yet. I haven't had a chance.
There's two names that it works.
I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
Talk to me about TKR. And
there we go.
And the post ups.
Right. So let's first of all talk about the fact that like we've heard from multiple people that like Zach was incredible, 2-time National Player of the Year. TKR is not going to be Zach Edey, but we've heard from people that know basketball that if TKR was the feature post player for Purdue, he would be on an all Big Ten team. This is an exhibition game. He didn't play all of his minutes against Brian Kalkbrenner, but he played a significant amount against him. The dude goes 10 of 20, 50%, right? Scores 22 points in 28 minutes, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, only 2 personal fouls tonight. He was everything as advertised. And somebody put that in the comments that TKR was as advertised. That's not the one I was putting up, Greg. TKR was as advertised. And he was. Like, name me 3 better centers in the country that he's going to face than he faced tonight. And he's got so many moves and so many counters to those moves, whether it's a spin move. He went over his left. He went over his right tonight. He shot faked and then dipped up and under a couple times. He shot 2 threes that both looked good. They didn't look bad coming off his hand. They just didn't go in. He can take people off the dribble. He did a face up. The thing that we had never seen that we saw tonight, Joe, he turned and just faced a guy and just pulled a 15-footer. TKR is going to be really, really good. I'm not worried about post offensive play. As much as I'm worried about post defensive play, I'm not worried about post offensive play.
Yeah, and I think I'm admittedly somebody I'm not as high or wasn't as high as you this offseason on what TKR could be, and it's similar to when I watched back all the minutes without Edey last year. It was just like I had the feeling of just like, oh yeah, like Purdue's offense like is elites, and they have really, really good players, and they maximize them to their fullest capabilities. And TKR is absolutely in that of like, he's just going to get the ball. He was able to just power through some of the fours when the fours are on him. He looked fine solid against Kalkbrenner in a couple of those matchups. That's the case, right? I've been a big advocate for TKR at the 5, but this offseason, just because I think it could be a super athletic lineup, but TKR at the 4 is just going to be able to body a lot of force. And I think that's something I probably overlooked a bit. And just seeing it today, it's like, oh yeah, there's a reason that TKR has been talked about as much as he has. And we'll talk. I'm going to wait for the defense to talk because I think we should talk about the centers in just a second. But offense.
I want to turn it to Fletcher Lawyer with you because you're always an advocate for Fletcher. And Fletcher Lawyer scored 17 points on 9 shots.
Yeah.
So run with it.
17 points and 5 assists. And like, it's going to be this constant battle this year, I think. And you maybe see a little bit of improvement, but like outside of taking out TKR post-ups, right? Because that's its own entity. Who was getting to the rim? Braden Smith a couple times. You know who really, besides him, was the only guy getting to the rim? Was Fletcher Lawyer. Yep. And it's going to be this battle of he might be one of the few guys that actually gets there because of his shooting gravity, but he's also not the best finisher at the rim. He's still somebody that just, again, 5 assists. He moves the ball. He makes the right play. Like, there's going to be spurts, I'm sure, this year where it's going to be like, hey, this Fletch really, should he get that many minutes? But I think for the most part, it's going to be, again, Fletcher Lawyer just makes the right play way more than he doesn't. And that's why he's going to be in the game for 30 minutes because Painter trusts him more than anybody else to be in the right spot defensively, even if he is giving up, size and athleticism. And offensively, he's going to either shoot the ball and make it, or he's going to be able to get downhill. And that's something that Purdue, as of this very second, I think there are a lot of pieces that can make it change. As of this very second, Purdue cannot get downhill that well. And Fletch was one of the few guys that could. Yeah, I mean, realistically, it's like you don't want too much more from Fletch out of that. Like maybe make another layup instead of it missing, and that's it.
Well, he's always seemed to have the worst luck when it comes to and ones, right?
Yeah.
Like he makes the right move. It just doesn't go down. Like it's frustrating because it's like it's the right move, and he had 2 tonight at the end where if they were both and ones, it might flip the game's momentum a little more in Purdue's direction. Obviously not worried overall too much about the win or the loss, but still it's a game of inches. And at the end of the day, you'll take those attempts every time because more times than not, they should drop.
Yeah. And drawing fouls, creating pressure, just that's going to be so big. And Fletch is going to be one of the guys that like is quietly going to be tasked with it a lot. And hopefully guys like CJ and Jakari and Colvin can get into that more too, and given more reps. Obviously CJ took 4 free throws, but 2 of them were because he stripped the dude and Ashworth just fouled him. But
well, and that was one thing. I know we're going to get into the defensive end talk, and we should. We spend so much time talking about the offensive end because offense is fun. It's easier to understand too, I think, because everybody's watching the ball. But a lot of time with defense, it's about what's going on off the ball. And Fletcher at one point cut off a pass at the elbow that turned into a turnover. And obviously we've talked a lot about CJ Cox and some of the things he can do disruptive wise and Jakari Harris, but definitely seems like, in the paint, on the boards, the defense is going to be a work in progress here for a little bit.
Yeah. And I think it probably starts with the center spot, but the guards aren't like without fault also, right? Where Smith and Lawyer, they just it's as simple as if they can just navigate screens and get around screens a little bit better, that probably solves honestly a lot of Purdue's issues. I'll throw Colvin and maybe even Heidi into that mix as well. Harris and Cox are just going to have to do it on a higher sample. Part of it is Purdue's philosophy, right? Where they want to force mid-range. And so they really want to make sure that guys coming off pin downs, coming off screens are curling and not just, being able to catch and shoot a wide open 3. But then from there, when that happens, they're going to be driving into bigs. And that's where we're going to get into it now. But like Burgess flashed a little bit in his couple minutes, maybe. And those are my first real minutes, but like nobody really stood out at all at the center spots. And so part of it is because 3 out of the 4 guys are really young. And there's just going to be things to improve, but yeah, I guess that's where I just want to start. I don't know if you want to anybody wants to dive into somebody specific, but it was just like nobody ultra stood out to me.
Well, let's real quick before you go, Kraig, break down who got minutes at the center spot to get people to understand like who's going to be having that opportunity.
So the highlighted blue, those are the center spots. Berg gets so you can see in both halves, there's 4 different centers, right? And whenever TKR and First were together, I said First is the 5. I think people would agree with that. But look in the first half. Berg gets 5 minutes at the center. Burgess gets 2. First gets 5. Jacobson gets 8. Second half, Jacobson definitely gets more. He gets 10. Berg gets 4. Burgess gets 2. First gets 4. So there's the hodgepodge. Part of it is like that's eventually going to whittle down. It's just going to be who exactly gets cut from it.
Yeah, and I don't know where we want to jump. But I feel like this is going to be the lengthiest conversation is the 5 spot.
Mm-hmm.
So just to tie a bow, because we've talked about Fletcher, we've talked about Braden, we've talked about TKR, the big 3, right? And we touched on Miles and Cam and a little bit in terms of what they brought and what we didn't see tonight, what we might see. Let's maybe wrap up the guard wing room and then let's jump to that 5 room and to tie a bow on it. So Joe, what did you see out of Jakari and CJ tonight that you liked specifically, and any concerns that you might have had on them? And then let's jump to the 5s.
Okay. Obviously the defense is what stood out most for both. And I know Jakari got burned a bit more, but in putting himself in spots, I'm okay with those, especially as a young freshman. CJ came in and he's able to pressure the ball, and that's going to be why they get minutes. They can do that and they can handle the ball. 1 for 5 shooting from Jakari. I'm not concerned about that. I trust the shot to be at least solid, if not more potential. Jakari crashes the glass well, 6 rebounds. Like he's going to be, if it becomes to the point where Harris and Cox are like just both good and they can both play whatever minutes they need to, Harris, I would assume, will get more matchups if teams are playing a bit bigger, and CJ might get it if teams are playing a little bit smaller. Just because I think Jakari's a little bit bigger, although I know he's not like listed that much bigger. It just feels like it. But then CJ, yeah, I mean, you saw a little bit of the shot making ability, getting to the mid range, being able to draw fouls. Like CJ, we would say, was the guy that, outside of the big three, he was the guy that stood out the most. His stat line is 4 points and 2 steals in 10 minutes. Like people that are just going to box score watch, they're going to look at CJ and be like, okay, whatever. But people that watch the game are going to be like, oh yeah, CJ really stood out. And that's great to see from freshman day one.
But he only played half the minutes at Jakari too, right? And he played 6 minutes less, 8 minutes less than Miles and Cam. I'm with you 100%. It made me nervous a little bit for all the defensive talk with Jakari. I actually thought Jakari was just trying too hard to make an impact tonight. It looked like he was trying to get a steal every time he picked somebody up, where it's like, dude, just play good D. Like, do what you do. The steals will come naturally because you're just playing solid defense. And he's not as big as an offensive threat as what CJ is. I think we've seen that from summer practice, from film, all of that type of thing. I guess the thing to me is like, and I'm not trying to pair this. I think they're both really, really good. But with this team specifically, and we saw tonight, like it was mainly the big three scoring. If you just need other people to go out there and get points, whether that's coming off the bench or whatever, like the defense isn't that much of a difference between CJ and Jakari to me. Just watching it, like Jakari might be just a little more aggressive, a little more physical, but CJ's pretty damn good too. He picked Ashworth pocket twice, just out in the open. He draws an offensive foul immediately on the next play from Kaufman-Renn after his second steal off of Ashworth. But he's also just going down and like hunting mid-range a little bit in this game, but we've seen him do it against Purdue in practice multiple times. I'm just wondering if like eventually Painter decides like he needs more shot creation and Cox can like even get more minutes than maybe we thought in the offseason.
Yeah, and I think that's possible. I also think I think Jakari can still, he's not quite the natural scorer of CJ. I think he can still be up in that area though. I think that can develop. It may not be a development this year, but I guess it could be more of a long-term thing.
Yeah. Well, you saw where, I mean, Lance Jones obviously was a veteran, but how he was able to find, his way and his role in the rotation last year. And that's predicated off the fact that he could play defensively and he could, handle the ball and take some responsibility off Braden's plate. So to your point, Kraig, like, I think it's going to be a competition of who can fill that role for this team so that they can try to continue to run the system that Matt Painter wants to run. And so when it comes to that piece of the puzzle, on trying to help Braden out, and then the piece of the puzzle at the 5, so you can keep TKR, dominating the 4 like we saw here tonight. And so I guess that can leave us to kind of our final topic, and try to figure out the 5. So we broke down the minutes, 4 different candidates of trying to figure things out, some young bucks, and then you got Caleb first. So, Joe, I'll just dial you up. Like, how do you see this shaking out early on? And then if you want to give the bigger picture behind it.
Yeah, I think right now for a while, it's just going to be kind of trial by fire, and Berg is going to get chances and Jacobson will. If Burgess doesn't redshirt, then he'll get chances. I still think there are scenarios where first is the best option defensively. I think in an ideal world, Jacobson is the one that probably just emerges, is a guy that can be a pick and pop guy. He can be a very legitimate rim protector. In theory, can have a touch of mobility defensively. He's not there yet. It's going to take time, and it's going to take time for Berg, and it's going to take time for Burgess, and you're just hoping to get something from first in his last year. But I mean, it wasn't like it was all bad, right? Jacobson knocks down a 3. He did a really good job rebounding the ball. I think that's another thing that's going to be crazy important from the center spot. He had 5 rebounds. The only other out of the 4 to grab a board was first. And so there's that also to play into part. But I think we should start with Jacobson just because I think if I had to pick one that stood out the most, it's him. And he also, I believe, got the most minutes out of the 4, which helps. You saw the upside and what he can be. Again, it's going to take time. Creighton is, Kalkbrenner is one of the best centers in the country. That also is a tough matchup to go up against for a lot of these guys' first game or first really meaningful minutes. But also defensively, like there was times Jacobson, you can kind of go through the 4, like Berg at time. I mean, he had 4 fouls, right? He got into foul trouble. I don't think the mobility guarding pick and rolls was great. Jacobson, maybe a little bit better get with that, but then there were times he just got absolutely buried down low, and the physicality was not there to protect the rim. First is a guy that has more mobility, and I think I liked more of what he's able to do out on the perimeter against a Creighton squad that features a lot of that. But was the rim protection great from him? No. And Burgess is kind of the wild card where I'm not going to draw really anything away from Burgess at this point. I'm just really just going to keep Burgess, I'm just going to keep a complete open mind for a while. I watched his high school film, and I think what I watched was still him coming back from injury because it looked like a different player than what I saw today. But yeah, if you were able to hear all that, right, Kraig? Still,
Yeah, I had my headphones on.
I'll kind
I
of
heard
throw
it all.
I'll throw it to you,
ready.
And then just kind of what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just so give and take right now, and I think it will change with reps, right? Like Berg is what we thought he was. He is probably the best screener out of the group, just because he's such a wide body, and like I thought he broke Braden open for that little mid-range shot better than anybody else on the floor. And just his physical presence down low, I thought he stood up better in post defense when people were trying to truly just back somebody down than anybody else. And I thought he rebounded. Like, I don't know how many rebounds he ended up with. He wasn't in there very much. So, Berg, oh God, he got 0 rebounds.
0. Yeah.
Well, I thought he at least sealed people out on box outs for other people to get rebounds. But like I think he's the most physically imposing presence, but he's slow, right? I mean, he's slow laterally, he's slow to recover. He gets in bad position, which leads to those fouls, right? The fouls aren't necessarily him deciding he's going to foul. It's that he's in the wrong position. So when he does try to block a shot, he's not in the right position to do it cleanly or anything like that. And then with Jacobson, like there were a couple of times where even the backup center just bully balled him down and just like backed him up 3 feet and took a shot. You want to see another 30, 40 pounds on him. And like, I get what you're saying with Caleb from the perimeter standpoint. I totally get that. In my mindset, I'm always like, if you're a post presence defensively, your first responsibility has to be able to defend the rim. And even if he was in the right spot defensively, people just went over him. Like, to me, they just blew him up down low. And I think Caleb First is a great guy. I think he's super intelligent, understands the game super well. I just felt like people went through him whenever they wanted. And my only thing about Burgess is like, we look at Berg and we're like, all right, he's way big, but he's a little bit too slow. Jacobson is way big, a little bit more mobile. He got caught on some backdoors and some cuts where he just didn't recognize it fast enough. And maybe that's just because it's his first game, but he's getting bully balled. Caleb is what Caleb is at this point after 4 years. To me, Burgess is almost that guy in the middle of all of those people. He's 6'11". He's a little bit taller than First. I don't care what they list those guys at. He's 20 pounds bigger than First. I don't care what the official program says. You just watch those two guys stand on the court. He's 20 pounds bigger. I don't think he's getting bullied down as much as Caleb or going through. He's higher energy. Like I'm a big, even though it was super limited minutes tonight, I got to see him in practice twice. And like, I just, if this team has a chance to go really far, I cannot in my mind. I think 30 games into the season, I think 3 years from now, Jacobson has the biggest upside, right? At the center position. But I think 15, 20 games into this season, Burgess might have the biggest upside to be like the most consistent offensively and defensively of anybody that's on the court right now.
That's interesting. That's definitely interesting to hear because obviously for us that are seeing this team for the first time, not getting to see too much of a sample size from Burgess, obviously you're always thinking about who the next redshirt candidate is. So in your mind, Kraig, you don't see that being an option. I mean, it's obviously an option, but do you think that that's where the route Painter takes?
Well, I in an earlier show that we did, I went on the record and said, if Burgess redshirts, in my mind, he is the most ready to contribute player that will have ever redshirted for Purdue since I've really started paying attention to Purdue basketball since the early 2000s. I know that's a big statement because TKR redshirted, and he's going to be really, really good this year, but he was coming off injury. Burgess was too, but he had a full high school year to recover. I don't know, man. There's something about the way he moves and his physicality and his size. You didn't get to see it tonight because he missed his 3-point shot, but in practice, he was probably the best 3-point shooter of the big men. I don't know. I'm going to be rooting for him not to redshirt. Let's put it that way.
And I said, I'm having a very open mind with him. I've seen him. I saw him in high school, and I've seen 5 minutes of him. It is just not a big sample size for me to lean one way or the other.
Right.
It's really going to be because in my head, it's still and I know I have probably a little bit more confidence in first than you, which also factors into this. If he is marginally better than first, Burgess is a little bit bigger, but not extraordinarily bigger. Is the red shirt or burning the red shirt worth marginally better than first? If that's the case, and obviously there's higher upside, but and I don't know the answer, right? Whereas
well, let me ask you this. What is the limiting factor in this team making an Elite Eight positionally right now?
I mean, it is the center.
Right. So if Burgess is marginally better than our other options, then I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, but also I don't know. It depends on where they end up too, because marginally better than not good is also still just not good. And so there's that too. I don't know. And like I said, I don't know the answer because and I don't know how you value this, right? You have Braden Smith, who's in Fletcher Lawyer and TKR, you do have to go for winning. And I assume that's Painter's primary thought, but I'm also imagining a year 5 Burgess, and a year 5 Burgess is going to be a problem. And
really good. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm glad I don't have to decide. I'm glad Painter has to figure that out because I think it's a win either way. I truly do think it's a win either way. It's either Burgess is good enough that you just have to play him, or you get him for a 5th year in which he's going to be really, really good.
David Head here in the chat bringing in, a bunch of thoughts here, so I'll read them off. He says, my order in the 5 tonight, most overall contribution, Berg, Jacobson / Burgess, then first. Didn't get to see enough of Burgess, but I think he's a little better than Jacobson as far as not being bullied and pushed around. First contributed almost nothing. I'm going to get killed for this. This is the big statement here. I'm going to get killed for this, but I think Jacobson should redshirt instead of Burgess. Your thoughts?
I understand the reasoning, right? I assume the thought process is the argument would be Burgess is
more physically ready.
Yeah. And you give Jacobson the year to put on the weights, put on the muscle. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it happens, but I don't think it's the craziest thought ever.
And I don't think there's anything you couldn't argue in that 5 spot. You can legitimately argue any of those people out there to play or to not play. It's just, it's give and take. And there's also a moment of me tonight, Joe, where I was just do we just say screw it and become Alabama and just play the small ball lineup with TKR at the 5, and whether you consider that TKR and Caleb, TKR and Burgess, TKR and Cam, because that's Purdue small ball, even with Burgess at the 4, whatever. Do we just say screw it and be hey, we're not going to be a good post defense team? we're going to have to score 90 to 95 every game, and let's just like be the offensive team we know we can be.
Well, and who's the team in the Big Ten that's going to force you to not do that? Because for the last 4 years, that team's been Purdue. Everybody in the Big Ten has to try to build their roster to stop Zach Edey. And, now Zach's gone. So, Joe, you tell me, like, who in the Big Ten is going to stop Purdue from doing the small ball? Because tonight, Creighton has good bigs, so you can't really, distribute a small ball lineup, right? But in the Big Ten, typically it's the land of the big man. But, like, we're all, still getting to know not just Purdue, but the rest of the Big Ten. So you tell me, Joe, who in the Big Ten is going to force teams to have to go back to that gravitational pull that is the center position that's dominated this conference for decades?
Yeah, I mean, it's like because there's going to be a few teams, I'll list them off in a second, that are going to play through their center more or have good centers. It's going to be the phrase I'm using is which coach blinks first, right? If say Purdue wants to go small in those lineups, which coach blinks first? If Indiana is a team that's going to play two bigs, Maryland, Michigan, Oregon, you could even consider with Kwame Evans he's a crazy athletic 4 that's like 6'11". UCLA could in theory at times. Washington will, Wisconsin will. Like there are teams that will play, and those are varying degrees, right? IU, Michigan, Maryland, probably the top 3 in terms of having legit 4s and 5s, or playing legitimate 2 bigs. You can still play small against that because, right, if we'll take IU, for example. They're going to play Renew at the 4 and Balo at the 5. If you play TKR at the 5 and Cam at the 4, Cam's going to have trouble with Renew in the post. Renew is going to have a lot of trouble out on the perimeter, though. And so it's which team blinks first, who is giving up what specifically. To Craig's point, like, I think there's scenarios in games where it's just like, if you're not getting the defensive production from the 5 that you want out of a traditional 5, the only reason you don't play TKR at the 5 is worry of getting him in foul trouble. Other than that, it's just like you do it and you play TKR at the 5 because teams are just not going to be able to keep up. I'm also like, when I say TKR at the 5, I think I exclusively say TKR at the 5 when it's Cam at the 4. To me, Burgess are first in, and they're like the quote unquote 5, and TKR is the 4 still. That's semantics more. Things could switch. The other thing, I wanted to get back to Burgess for one point, because I thought about this during the game. And like I said, I have a very, very, very small sample size of watching him. I watched his high school film. I don't think it's the best indicator of what he'll be, just because he was coming back from injury. As I look at him now, is like, actually, I'll phrase it to you, Kraig, because you are big on Burgess. If Burgess was a redshirt freshman right now and not a true freshman, what percent chance would you say he should start?
If he was a redshirt freshman?
Yeah, like he could not redshirt this year. It was not a possibility. Or where do you think he would?
I mean, in that scenario, I would say maybe 33% chance he should start. But the reason that I'm so high on him is because he's only had 2.5, 3 months to play with his team. Like,
yeah,
I just think his growth ceiling, like to me, whatever Jacobson's growth ceiling is, he's not putting 40 pounds on between now and December, right? And whatever Berg's growth ceiling is, he's not changing his agility drill by a half second between now and December.
Yeah.
The figuring out the little pieces of how Purdue wants to play team defense and all that stuff, I think Burgess can figure out potentially by December, late December, early January. I think he has the physical size, strength, and shot making ability that if he can learn those other things by January, he potentially could be the best big in that rotation next to TKR. And I mean, I do think it's amusing, right? Because if we talk to anybody else nationally and we say small ball, they think TKR and Cam. When Painter says small ball, he's still talking about a 6'11" and a 6'10" guy, right? So small ball to him is first in TKR or Burgess in TKR. and then really small ball to Painter is TKR and Cam. Because did we see that at all tonight? TKR at the 5 and Cam at the 4.
No.
Yeah, we didn't.
We saw Cam at the 4 some, but not TKR at the 5 with him.
Well, and
Right.
if TKR is the 5 and not the 4, how much does that hurt your strength in TKR, where you're adding more responsibility with what he has to do because he doesn't have another big to help him out?
Yeah, it's a give and take where he's going to be tasked with even more defensively. Although I think in my head, if TKR is the 5, they just need to switch what they're doing defensively too, of just like being this aggro, like crazy aggressive team, and just knowing like if you get burned, you're giving up shots at the rim, but you're forcing more turnovers in the meantime and really applying pressure that it could balance. And then on the other end, you're just banking on not a single 5 being able to stay in front of TKR or a single 4 being able to match Heidi's athleticism.
Well, I'll say this much. Obviously, what Daniel Jacobson brings offensively is exciting. Where you see that here in the next 4 years, everything that he can do, knock down some free throws, hit a 3, you see the ability. We've had different centers here in the past, Matt Harms, guys that had skinnier frames that they eventually figured out how to make it work within Matt Painter's system. So I have no doubt that he'll eventually find his place, and Brandon Brantley's as good as they get when it comes to coaching up bigs. I did like seeing Will Berg's intensity at the end, where he got that block and got the shot clock violation and the intensity he showed after that. So, that's the kind of player he's going to have to be, is, bring the intensity, bring the energy. So I enjoyed that. Caleb First, as Kraig said, great dude, and has ability to do some different things, and is the veteran of that group. It was funny when he went up for the dunk and he got blocked. I was like, I think most fans are like, come on, you got to dunk that. And then and the one thing we haven't brought up yet, shout out to Creighton's play-by-play people, calling the game. I thought they were fantastic. Sometimes you never know what you're going to get with a public broadcast like that. They were fantastic. It was like a CBS broadcast caliber as far as the way they called the game. And I thought they were very fair to produce stuff, because when Caleb First went up for the dunk and they said he blocked it clean, then they see the replay. He clearly got hit on the arm. Should have been a foul. But at the end of the day, I did want to give a shout out to the guys that called the game, because I thought they really did a really good job of I think they understood that there was a lot of people tuned in from West Lafayette. So they were showing some love our way. So
they crashed the system. I don't know if you saw on Boiler Diehards, Greg, but all these people kept getting error messages. Most people didn't get into the game until like halfway through the first half, because so many people tried to buy and log in that they crashed the system, and they kept on getting error messages. Like people that didn't buy a login earlier in the day. So many people tried to buy in right at the beginning of the game that it friggin' crashed the system. Most people didn't get into
like in the social network when
right.
Facebook, he crashes the Harvard EDU, So leave it to Purdue fans here for doing that for an exhibition game to start the year. But we're all curious to see what this new look Boilers team is going to look like, and how Painter's going to kind of lay the groundwork for the next generation of Boilers. So
can I shout somebody out?
Of course, you can shout out anybody.
That'd be Aiden Kuntz in the chat. So good stuff, fellas. Shout out to Joe for the Nebraska Public Media login. For all of you day one Boilers in the Stands fans, you guys remember Aiden. He is out at Incarnate Word, second year as a graduate assistant. So appreciate Aiden popping back in. He was a part of the first year of when me and him joined. I know you guys had stuff prior to this, so not the first year of Boilers in the Stands specifically, but shout out Aiden. He's doing big things.
Yep. He's a day one guy. We appreciate you tuning in, Aiden. We missed you, buddy. Hope everything's going well down in Texas. So, I think we're wrapping things up here. I want to give another shout out here to BJ Rule. Appreciate you sponsoring this show. I know Kraig gave a shout out here early on. Make sure you hit him up at 317-345-4600 for any real estate needs you have in the West Lafayette area. Shout out to him, and thank you for everybody that tuned in here tonight. Even Nicholas Gutwin gut whined. He says, "Thanks, Kraig and Joe, for your inputs on Purdue basketball. I'm thankful for you two and only you two because
Not
Nick,
thankful enough to spell Craig's name right.
he is. He's only thankful for you two because
I made a post on Twitter yesterday of like how many people had misspelled my name this week. It was literally at least 15 people this week. It's Kraig with a K, special K.
Yeah, but he was only putting that because he's mad at me because he said I'm an idiot earlier in the chat. And
I know, I saw.
And nobody's arguing that I'm an idiot. like, give me a damn break. It's the first game of the year. I haven't watched this team play. I couldn't even get to the joint practice. This is not easy. And I showed up, I got home from dinner, so I was able to tune in at like the 15-minute mark of the first half. So like, I'm sitting here right along with the rest of you trying to figure out what I'm seeing as we get later in the year. That's what I told Painter. I'm like, I didn't even want to talk to Painter because I don't know what, I just want to talk about last year. My mind is still thinking about the national championship. So we're now resetting and getting into this new season. And that's why it was nice to, uncork this new year and watch, some new Boilers and start to get into college basketball mode. It's surreal that it's already here, but it's exciting all at the same time.
And to be specific, also, Nicholas, Kraig Bowers and Joe Jackson would not be here on the show if Greg Braggs didn't.
Listen, I've said
stop. If Greg Braggs didn't start this show and build this base, nobody would know who the hell Kraig Bowers or Joe Jackson was.
You guys aren't giving enough.
True. It's true.
It's not true because you guys were well on your ways. Obviously, I know good basketball minds when I see them, and we all understand. You two are here for the basketball thoughts. I'm here for the meatball takes because I know Casey Bartley was in the chat earlier. We were going to pull that. We were going to pull that comment up, but I think we took it off. But he was making fun of me about my thought of Braden Smith posting up. I think it's a great idea. I love the fadeaway jumper. I love guards that post up. You see some of the
He's 6 foot, Greg. He's not posted up.
Hey, dude, Chris Paul post your ass up. You know what I mean? Like some great guards. Who was the guard for Wisconsin that would do this all the time? Post guys up. He used to kill Purdue. He was there for like 7 years. Which guard am I thinking of?
Brad Davidson.
He right? He'd post you. I think it's a good idea. And when it starts to happen, Casey, I'm coming for you. But no, we're excited to see Casey.
Hey, on that note, Joe and I are going to be on Casey's podcast tomorrow night. Monday night. Yeah, Joe and I are going to be on. What's that?
I said, dude, that's great. And you tell Casey that I'm going to be on his ass. And I'm going to start planting the bug in Braden's ear about posting up just so I can juice this up and then have it go my way so I can start talking some crap about this. I think it's a great idea.
Go to a post-game press conference. He's going to ask Painter. He's like, so why did we not see any Braden Smith? Man. Also, one other thing, and you briefly mentioned the refs. It's been very nice. It's been an hour and a half show, and like just haven't even had to think about the refs or any discourse around that. I miss
beautiful
and watching him and all that. It is going to be very nice not having that specific discourse, though.
It was funny though because I was like, man, I feel like we didn't have near the free throw advantage we normally have, and then I went and looked at it, and we were plus 13 at free throws tonight still, and I was like, never mind, can't mention that.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. It's going to be a fun year. Mackey's first game here is on Wednesday, an exhibition.
Yep.
Casey texted me the Old Gold Show. That's the name of the podcast. I missed that earlier. The Old Gold Show. Joe and I will be on there on Monday with Casey. Good friend of the show. He's hopped on a few times. I know he gave you shit about your post up take.
No. And you know what? And you tell Casey I didn't want to be on his show anyway. No, I'm kidding. You don't need me on the show. These guys will have you covered. They are two of the very best covering Purdue basketball, but Casey does a great job. Brian Newbert does a great job. All the guys across the board on the Purdue beat have always been so great and welcoming with us. We'll be back covering the team all season long. Full season of home games, some road games sprinkled in. Craig's going to be going on some deep road trips once again. So we're going to be doing a lot of stuff and get you all the way to March and and beyond. So let's hope we have another deep run like we did last year. But again, we appreciate everybody hanging out as always. So hit the like button. We went a little long today just because it's like a getting to know you. I needed it more than anybody. These two have been doing shows for months, but I needed this just to try to understand who the hell is on this team, because there's just so much to try to figure out now. But it makes for some fun basketball conversation. And as we get through November, maybe I'll start having some better basketball takes, Nicholas. But I love you. Don't worry. If covering the Chicago Bears, you get 900 people calling you an asshole as the season goes on. And every show, you hear it from all of them. So if I have one Nicholas I have to deal with, I am just fine with that. So criticism is always welcomed and encouraged here. We do encourage everyone to try to keep it respectful in the chat, but we're also not a bunch of softies. Yeah, I am going to wrap it up. This is my Midwestern goodbye. Don't tell me what to do, Matt Painter. You don't scare me anymore. He does scare me a little bit, but yeah, no, it's been fun talking with you guys. You weren't expecting me here on the show tonight, but here I am.
I was not.
You know, we got to get into.
He was here before us, Joe. I logged on and I was like, "What the?" Like I jumped.
I had the same thing. I was like, "Oh, you're on." I was like, oh, "Okay, cool."
Oh man! All right. So, any final thoughts, or do you just want me to end the show?
Hey, basketball's back. Basketball's fun. Don't overreact too much to an exhibition. And lots of random lineups that we aren't probably going to see consistently. I'm excited Purdue's basketball's back. I'm excited college basketball's back. And yeah, I'm excited I'm excited to be back at Mackey Wednesday. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not like the most excited for the exhibition, but I'm excited for November 4th. That should be a fun day.
Yeah. And I would just jump onto that and say, don't even overreact to the first month of the season. Like let them figure it out. I am really excited to be going into a season where Painter has to tinker and figure it out and watch. Because we've seen him do it, like the 18-19 season, multiple seasons. We've seen him figure it out on the fly, figure out the best pieces, the best rotations. I want to see him figure it out. I'm excited about it. I think there's a lot of good players on this team. Let it ride for a month and a half before you make too many big statement, judgment type stuff on the season. And I'm with you, Joe. I was there today for the volleyball match. It was awesome. I got a little preview of Mackey. I'm ready to be there in the next couple weeks.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. I, ironically enough, after Halloween on that Sunday, I'm going to be in Arizona for the Bears-Cardinals game in the very stadium that we ended the season in last year for the national championship. And then the next day is the start of a new season.
Oh.
So there's a
Are
bit
you going to find the press room for the first time?
No, they don't see it in football. They don't let me get in the press room yet for the NFL.
Well, you were golfing. You were golfing while Joe and I were in the press room last year.
Then I'll be golfing again when I get down to Arizona. Thank you very much. So we're gonna continue to keep keep myself in my wheelhouse there. But I'm excited to be back down in Arizona, resetting. And then getting back to basketball. So unfortunately I won't be able to be there when they hang the banner, but but I'm excited to see all the reactions and content you guys bring when you're there. Okay, that's it. No more Midwestern goodbye. Hour and a half show. Thank you once again to everybody that tuned in. Make sure you hit the like button. As always, thank you, Joe and Kraig, for your hard work and all the knowledge that you bring to the table here on Boilers in the Stands. Stay tuned for more announcements on shows coming up. Obviously, Wednesday night, we'll have another post-game show for the exhibition. It is only available on Big Ten Plus for those of you that want to watch the game, but we'll be here for the post-game show to break it down for you if you can or cannot see it. And then we get into the regular season itself. So, all right. Thank you again for everybody. We'll see you here soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Go Bears tomorrow, but always boiler up. That's right. I said go Bears.